Many years ago, David Hartman, one of the most profound thinkers in Jewish life in the 20th century, wrote an article. This was early on in the state of Israel. I think it was 1950-something, early in the 1950s. And the article was entitled, Auschwitz or Sinai? Auschwitz or Sinai? It was in a book that he wrote called The Heart of Many Rooms. And his intention in the article was to call our attention to the way in which we orient ourselves. And he was specifically speaking about and speaking to the state of Israel. Would the state of Israel see itself as a reaction to Auschwitz, thereby seeing themselves as perennial victims in history? Or were they going to see themselves as inheritors of that most profound moment in Jewish life when we all gathered at the foot of Mount Sinai and entered into the covenant with God? A moral covenant that dictates how we should live each and every moment of our lives. Auschwitz or Sinai? I would suggest, and in no way do I want to step on the brilliant philosophical and theological toes of Hartman, but I would suggest the question is slightly different in this moment. It's not Auschwitz versus Sinai after October 7th, but it is Auschwitz and Sinai after October 7th. October 7th changed everything. October 7th taught us something profound, that we are still, even in our own land, not safe. And that here in America, a country where we thought for sure that we had overcome the anti-Semitism and hatred of thousands of years that followed Jews wherever it was that Jews would live, was also behind us. So Auschwitz remains indelibly etched in our hearts and in our mind. But so too must Sinai. There's a reason why I chose to speak about our experiences in Israel on a Shabbat morning. There were those who said, let's do it in the middle of the week, let's do it on a Saturday night, and I said, no, we do it on Shabbat morning. We do it on Shabbat morning when we come to hear Torah, when we come to remind ourselves of who we are as a people. I shared last week in the Shara Minyan, I introduced those people at the Shara Minyan to a young man by the name of Gabriel. Gabriel is a young person who made Aliyah from South Africa. I'm guessing he's probably in his mid-20s, maybe late 20s. A rather handsome fellow, big, buff. Your typical, if you close your eyes and imagined that virile soldier, that Israeli, that is Gabriel. He finished one of the most elite units of the military, and he decided after Miluim, after his reserves duty, that he would create a program for young Israelis and Olim, those who make Aliyah to Israel, who have this burning desire like he did, like he had, to enter into one of the highest and most elite units, to create a training program on his own. A training program to help young men and women, mostly men, unfortunately, but still some women combat units, to reach to the highest pinnacle in the Israeli army. And how privileged our group was to come and hear from Gabriel and one of his proteges, a young man, maybe, nothing more than a boy really, who's in the middle of training and working hard to become one of the elite soldiers in Israel. And Gabriel went through the story of October 7th for him personally. And I'm not going to go through the entirety of that story. But he had been up late partying the night before, as young people are wont to do. And maybe he had a slight hangover that morning when he was shaken awake by his roommate saying, "There are air raid sirens in Jerusalem. Get out of bed. Come down to the shelter." At which point Gabriel said, "It's just sirens. I'm going back to sleep," which he did. And then his roommate woke him up a few minutes later or 10 minutes later or whatever it is and said, "Gabriel, get up. This is serious." And Gabriel woke up, and they're traditional Jews, so they were not listening to the news, but this was a moment of extreme danger. And as we know, pikuach nefesh, doche Shabbat and Hagim, the safety of our lives, the security of our well-being, pushes off all other mitzvot in Jewish life. And so he discovered what was going on down in the south, and even though he is no longer in Miluim, he's no longer in the reserves, he grabbed his gun, which he has a license to carry, and he grabbed his bulletproof vest, and he grabbed his tourniquet, and he grabbed his friend, and they hopped into a car. Only, to which point he jumped out of the car, and he ran back into his apartment because he forgot something. What did he forget? He forgot his tzitzit. He forgot his tzitzit, and he wasn't going to battle without his tzitzit. The question isn't Auschwitz or Sinai. The question is, how do we take Auschwitz and Sinai and create a country that both knows how to defend itself against terrorists and those who wish its destruction, while at the same time holding fast to who we are as Jews? There's a very, very, I don't know, I would say well-known, but there's a very, very important book that is traveling all around Israel these days. And it is a book of commentary written by a soldier on Mesilat Yesharim. What is Mesilat Yesharim? Mesilat Yesharim is one of the most famous works of Jewish ethics, Musar, written in 1740 in Italy by a guy by the name of Moshe Chaim Luzzatto. And that book is studied in yeshivot all over Israel. But this young man wrote copious notes in the margins of the book in an attempt to try to express how he wants to live a moral and ethical life, particularly as he served in the military. And he died fighting in Gaza. And his book is now making the rounds to understand how to combine the moral demands of Sinai with the practical reality of a nation at war. How do you fight a moral battle? And I don't think, studies have shown there is no country in the world that fights as morally as Israel does. Despite what MSNBC and CNN and others may say, and I don't mean to pick on those two news stations, Israel is fighting a moral war. Israel is losing innocent lives because they are so concerned to not take lives of Palestinians. And Gabriel was just one of many individuals who shook us to the core for what it means to live in this country at this time. When we were serving meals at Shokedah, 2 kilometers from the border, listening to the bombs of the Israeli soldiers, the Chayalim, trying to destroy the tunnels in Gaza. Soldiers were coming constantly for a little bit of a home-cooked meal. And every soldier that came had a smile on their face. Every soldier that came had a sparkle in his or her eyes. Every soldier that came gave all of us a big hug, as if we were doing something important, as if we needed that hug. They needed that hug. And our presence in Israel in that moment was just that, to hold them, to elevate them, to give them the hugs that they need, to say to them that we understand you are fighting a just war. We understand Auschwitz and Sinai. We will not allow ourselves to be victims again. We will fight, but we will fight this war morally and ethically. We will do what we need to do to destroy the enemy, but we will not lose our souls in the process. We will not lose our sense of who we are. And what did they ask of us? They asked of us something simple. Tell our stories. Go home. Stand proud. Be Jewish. Don't forget who you are. Auschwitz and Sinai together. That is what defines who we are as a Jewish people. Shabbat Shalom.